So I'm going to have my guests, our guests, introduce themselves today because there's a lot of them, and I don't want to mess it up. So take it away, you guys. Oh, and really quickly, I want to just reiterate to everyone that if you have your microphone on right now while everyone else is speaking, please put it on mute, just so that we don't get the background interference, like right now. Should we go?
Yeah, let's just go in order.
Okay. Me and Libby are going to go.
Hi, I'm Hopfauf. I'm the audiovisual archivist and program manager from Moving Image Preservation of Puget Sound, or MEPOP.
And I'm Ari. I'm the assistant AV archivist at MEPOP.
And I'm Andrew Weaver. I'm the digital infrastructure and preservation librarian at Washington State University.
And I'm Dylan Flesch, media asset librarian at KEXP, the radio station in Seattle. Okay, so let's get started. Can you guys see the slides? I just want to make sure that's presenting to everyone. Hopefully folks see the slides.
No, I can't see it.
Libby and I can see it. We can see them.
Okay, let me share. So it says I'm sharing my second monitor, which I have the slides up on.
We can see this one.
Is that Pueblo? You can see them?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'm just, there we go. I see them.
Okay,
it's me.
Okay. Perfect. So we just introduced ourselves and we kind of introduced the partners who put on this event as well, but we'd just like to share with you details on an event hosted by KEXP and put together by MEPOP, Seattle Public Library, UW, and Washington State University Libraries. So this was exactly a month ago today, and held in Seattle at KEXP's public gathering space. Get to the next slide here. So the idea for our event was actually inspired in part by the MemLabNet. Two of the partners who put on the event, John Vallier from University of Washington, and I attended a conference in DC, the Radio Preservation Task Force, and while we were there, heard about MemLabNet and a bunch of other really cool transfer labs that were set up in different libraries and at museums. So that was kind of an inspiration for this. And we started talking and thought it would be a great idea to have kind of a personal digital archiving day, and started planning the event. And from there brought in additional partners and got it on the calendar. So the idea was to have a pop-up event focused on music memories, and it would just be a one-day event. It would be free, but people would be required to register. And we'd invite people to bring certain types of media down that we would make digital copies of and send them home with it on a USB drive. We also shared preservation tips. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. And my team, feel free to, we didn't really talk about who's presenting what, and I just also want to say we're kind of envisioning a conversational kind of a webinar here, so feel free to ask questions as we go. And Andrew, Libby, and Ari, feel free to, if anyone would like to jump in and take the next slide.
Oh, sure, I can jump in. So yeah, in terms of planning, we all collaborated on an equipment list, and it wasn't a challenge, but it was a little tricky because we had so many institutions kind of spread across different areas. I guess I'm the outlier here in Washington State, on our east side of the state, with everybody else on the west side. But we basically just created a collaborative Google spreadsheet and put in a list of institutions and what each institution thought that we could bring in terms of equipment for each format. and that it required a little bit of kind of honing in on exactly what we would need in that spreadsheet, because we need to think about things like, well, even if we had a bunch of people bringing a bunch of equipment, then you had to account for having enough computers and enough analog to digital converters to actually be able to create stations around that equipment. And so trying to kind of create a sheet that would get the information and allow us to collaborate so that we all were on the same page in terms of what would be set up on the day of the event. And so after all that and kind of going back and forth on the sheet, Dylan and the folks at KEXP kind of took all that and amalgamated it into workstation recipes. So we had a total of 10 workstations, as you can see on the slide, of 6 types based on the registrations. And we then kind of attempted to kind of figure out how the stations would line up and who would be operating them, and then build the actual scheduling around the stations. So going back to our scheduling list and figuring out which participants would be at which stations during the day. Which I don't know if we touch on this later in the slide, but things did end up being a little more fluid than some of the strict scheduling that we envisioned while putting this together. But Dylan, you guys have anything else to say about that?
Yeah, we definitely had, we had kind of slotted people into different times of day to try and distribute attendance as evenly as possible. But we definitely had a lot heavier attendance early in the day than later, and we got a little later start than we had planned. But I think, you know, we were good on our feet, just kind of dealing with people as they arrived. And we also had a great partner in Seattle Public Library, kind of keeping people attended to while they were waiting for their turn. I can speak to the last bullet there. We also did ask people to fill out a waiver just saying that there's, of course, some risk that bringing back this equipment could damage it, making sure people knew that going into it. And then also asking if folks would be interested in sharing content with KEXP and the partners putting on the event. And I think I have more on this a little further in the slides, but I think about half of the attendees, or about that, did elect to share content, which is great. Okay, I'll go to the next slide here. So for attendance, we had 57 people sign up through our online registration form, and I think that was actually, there may have been a few more who signed up but didn't RSVP. So 57 people confirmed that they would be showing up, and then 36 people attended. And I haven't put on many events, but I think it's good to always expect a certain number of people to not show up. And then also, I think we did have a couple people who didn't RSVP just show up because they had heard about it. So of the 36 who attended, we successfully transferred media for 33 of those. I think you guys can check me on that. But I think there were just, yeah.
Ari and I took back 2 VHS tapes as well for people who had been bumped from the list or got there late. So I guess that counts as 35 successful transfers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. That's great. And then, yeah, we also had 14 people elect to share their content with KEXP and partners. And we also recorded interviews with people who were interested in sharing the stories behind their tapes. So we have 2 very short, but just a few questions asked about where has this tape been? You know, how did it make it here? And people shared some cool memories. So you can keep an eye on KEXP, and we'll be posting an article sort of recapping this event hopefully soon, and include those along with content that was shared by attendees. Okay. All right. Maybe Libby or Ari, would you like to take this next slide?
Sure, yeah. So we had the equipment for a bunch of different types of formats, but we ended up mostly doing audio cassette tapes, VHS tapes, 2 films that were 16 millimeters, and I did not see the photos at a camera, but I was actually surprised that there weren't more people who came in with those. I was hoping for some neat posters. But yeah, there were definitely a lot more audio cassette tapes, which we'd known from the sign-up sheet that was the heavy focus of the content that people were bringing in, and mostly VHS tapes for the video.
A couple people, I thought it was kind of neat. A couple people had brought in like a cassette tape, but then when they found out we could scan it for them, like had the sleeve of their cassette scanned. So I don't know if that like got captured in the stats. It came for one thing and then ended up with 2.
That's right. I should add that.
I think that's also something to note too, is that a lot of people kind of did, even if they signed up for one thing, they kind of showed up with just bags full of various media types, and there were a couple people who we ended up, just due to the scheduling and everything, they might have signed up to do a VHS, but we were like, well, we can do a different format for you right now, and they're like, okay, I got that, and they would just pull things out of the bag, and so there was definitely some fluidity that went on, even in terms of the signups and then the eventual formats that we ended up doing for people. And the members of the public seemed pretty fluid with kind of what they were showing up with and expecting as well.
Yeah, they mostly just seemed really excited to get to preserve something of theirs.
And I guess it relates to this. And in hindsight, I guess it's you could kind of assume it's relatively obvious, but coming kind of from the archival perspective here, where we always have so many media formats kicking around in our head, a takeaway was that, big surprise, it was the consumer formats that definitely far outnumbered everything else. So we were, of course, prepared for different track orientations, for quarter-inch tape and DAT and everything, but it was really, yeah, the cassettes and the VHS tapes that showed up in overwhelming numbers, which, again, in hindsight, makes a whole lot of sense. But
and so if we were to do this again, we definitely will need to focus more heavily on having that type of equipment and maybe
which is something that we kind of discussed after we did see the sign-up sheet with things like the 3/4-inch video, where we knew that only one person had signed up for 3/4-inch video. And we kind of made the call, well, for this event at least, we really want to try to accommodate everyone who signed up and make it very broad. Which did end up having, resulting in somebody having to lug down a gigantic 3/4-inch player and make sure that all the wiring and everything was there for that one person, and having a station that would support that. So I guess it's also something to think of for people planning events like this, is kind of think about, do you want to be very broad, or do you really want to focus on what you most expect to walk in the door,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And great lead into our next slide as well. So after the event, we all met and discussed what we could think about for the next one of these. So we're certainly talking about doing another, maybe early next year, hosted at University of Washington or potentially Seattle Public Library. But a few notes from our sort of post-mortem meeting on that was to allow ourselves a little more time for setup. We did bring in all the equipment the evening before, and then I think we had about 2 hours for setup, and it took maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes. So it's not far off, but it would have been a little more of a comfortable start if we had allowed ourselves a little more time.
Or possibly before, if it had been possible.
Oh, sorry.
I was saying if it had been possible to do it the day before, that probably would have even been better, since it's a public space.
Right.
Yeah, with that setup time, something Libby and I talked about was that, like, if we had had more, if we had been able to have like a longer setup time, it would have been useful because it would have been useful to like kind of do mini sort of like station overviews for like everybody who is going to be helping on the different stations, because like, for example, like UW brought those Elgato software to capture the VHS, and Libby and I hadn't used that before, so even though it was like pretty easy to use and intuitive, that just like took time, you know, and if we had questions, that means we had to kind of step away from what we were doing and like go find somebody who wasn't in the middle of something to help us. So it would have been great to like kind of do like mini trainings, sort of like, this is what you need to know, you know, this is how it works. And then like that way everybody at least has like a base knowledge. And then if you need help, you can go find somebody, but you kind of have an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Another thing from the event that I could have planned better from the KXP side of things and just in general was having a plan for tracking media throughout the whole workflow, and tracking flow of guests as well. We had, you know, sign-in sheets and at least an intended workstation for everyone as they arrived, but with day of, you know, durations being different from what people had estimated, and you know, anytime people had maybe more media than they said they were going to bring, it would have been nice to have a system in place to kind of deal with that at each of the workstations as we went through the event and got either off schedule or ahead of schedule. I think that would be good. And of course, people may not know the duration of their media, but I think, you know, trying as hard as possible to get a good understanding of that before the event would definitely be helpful. Maybe even asking people, just send a photo of it could help us figure out more info on what's coming in beforehand.
Yeah.
And that would kind of speak to there was a little bit of a confusion at one moment because some of the people there hadn't worked with, like the people from Seattle Public Library aren't audiovisual archivists, so they hadn't worked with these different formats, and someone brought in an 8mm, like a high 8 tape, and they thought it was 8mm film, and we'd had a discussion about how we had some of the equipment, but it wasn't going to work, and so this person ended up digitizing a tape version instead of that one, which would have been like the original format. So if they'd sent a picture, we could have figured that out for them ahead of time.
Yeah, I think one thing to note too was that people, you know, everyone who attended, even if they didn't go home with their media digitized, we were able to provide them with a cool zine on digital preservation and just having conversations with them about what they have and what they could do, you know, in terms of best practices or where they might go locally in Seattle to get that digitized by a paid vendor. And I think that's another thing that would be fun is to have, you know, we shared a list of local vendors with people. We shared a zine, and I think that was really a hit. So having, you know, as many resources that sort of fit the event as possible. So that is our presentation. I have some links in the slide here for more info. We had an amazing photographer taking photos of the event and some coverage before and after the event as well. I'm just going to open this up so you can see. Oh, not that one. Some cool photos. I guess I have that linked wrong. Hang on just a second here. Some fun photos from the event. You can see we're really using all the space we had.
And I think if people look at the photos, they can kind of see the kind of space that the KXP gathering room is where we did this event. And I think that one takeaway is that the event really did benefit from being in this amazing space. It made it very easy to manage people, and when people had wait times, the KXP gathering space here, I mean, there's a pop-up record store, there's a cafe and everything, so there were things for people to do as they waited, and I think that kind of helped with morale of the patrons during the whole process.
Definitely.
It was really fun. Like, one of the best parts, Dylan kind of already mentioned it, but one of the best parts was, like, sitting down with somebody and, like, getting them set up and them just kind of, like, they couldn't even, like, help themselves from telling you, like, why it was important, you know, just, like, this is the last time that, like, this is my brother's cassette that he made in high school, and like, he died, you know, like 13 years ago, or this is the last time, you know, this is the first time I'm going to be hearing his voice for a really long time. And just kind of like people really like having flashbacks and like really like having, you know, a lot of emotional reaction to their stuff. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. That's another note, actually. It might have been good to have some tissues around because there were tears and there was a lot of emotion around the event, actually. And yeah, like Ari said, people just kind of wanted to talk about it, even if, you know, if you didn't want to say, hey, what's on this tape, you know, if they didn't want to talk about it, but people just really wanted to volunteer and just opened up, and it was pretty moving.
Yeah, that was another thing I noted in the slide here. Having more focus at the end of just asking people for testimonials, I think would be a cool thing, or after an event, you know, posting just a very brief story from people who are interested. You know, a little less intense than going back to the recording studio and sitting down in front of a mic, just like, oh, is there anything you'd like to share about this in a follow-up post, for instance? I think would be cool too. But yeah, it was amazing, and people were very happy. And we've been getting emails, when is the next one? So
Yay.
it's very, very popular and fun.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I think we'll open it up.
Great. Thank you guys so much. That's awesome. I have a bunch of questions. I'm totally going to open it up to our partners first. I'm watching the chat box as well, you guys, so you can always ask in there if you'd like. But I'll get cracking then, since I don't see any, or if anybody wants to ask a question. Oh, hi, Dylan. I can see you now.
Hi.
So, okay, well, why, you might, I'm sorry if you said this, why the focus on music specifically? I'm guessing it was a KEXP thing.
That's right, yeah, because we were hosting it at KEXP, and the conversations leading up to planning this event were around music and radio. Specifically, we decided to keep it focused just because we figured there would be a lot of demand. And that was one way to kind of limit it. But we were, we allowed people to kind of self-determine what qualifies as a music memory as well.
Yeah, we definitely kind of agreed that we didn't want to be in a role of policing content, you know, and saying that's not relevant. You know, we didn't actually kind of enforce anything and tell anybody that they couldn't do something because we didn't really, that's not what we wanted to be doing. Was there an average running time that you think you could probably, like, what was the longest? What was, because, you know, VHS could go on for days, practically.
Yeah.
We had two of the VHS tapes, the two actually that Libby and I ended up taking back to MePops with us. yeah, that we like stopped digitizing at the event at an hour and then brought it back, and those I think were both 2 hours. But somebody had, I mean, like, somebody had high 8 tapes.
We didn't digitize any of them.
That, Andrew, do you remember that guy that was?
Yeah, there was the guy with the high 8 tapes.
Yeah, and he had like a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, he digitized for an hour, and then like his tape wasn't done, and he just had like kind of an infinite amount of like stuff. So I think being clear with like how long people have was like sort of a challenge, you know, like if nobody was around, you might be like, okay, yeah, like keep going, but
yeah.
Once we knew the length ahead of time, we could like line it up so that someone, because the first tape I did was only 10 minutes long, so that person could have gone right after, the person with the long tape could have gone after the short one.
I think that the shortest thing we had was the U-matic, which was a 2-minute long commercial. So it was really great we were able to do that, but it did make us laugh that yes, we lugged all that down for a 2-minute tape.
And how many volunteers do you think that you guys had? Like how many AV archivists versus how many more librarian types, and then just like pure volunteers just want to help out, but not a lot of like, you know, public library experience?
I think there were 7 AV people.
Yeah, because there's John.
That's right.
Yeah. Dylan and Ty.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, so we had some volunteers coming and going, right, Dylan? Like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had 7 or 8 AV people, and then 3 people managing sort of sign in and flow of people, and then 1 person doing testimonial recording as well. And I think we could have used another person. You know, we also had to run and go pick up additional equipment and stuff like that. So I would say having 1 more would have been comfortable. One other thing we talked about was people also really just want to ask about the work that we do, and having some time built in for that would have been cool too.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were also busy helping people digitize that we didn't have, you know, there was maybe more demand for just sitting down and talking about how to take care of materials, or how cool our jobs are.
So there was a question on from Barry about the zine, and and there seemed to be a little confusion. The zine, I believe that you guys passed out was the GPPL's Maximum Preservation 2.
That's correct.
Right. So we have that on our Memory Lab website now. The link was broken before, but thank you guys, we fixed it. So that's up online, and it's just like a basic digital preservation zine. You all saw it. We handed them out in your bags, you guys, when you came to boot camp. There was one that's more for like physical stuff, and one for digital preservation. But I think, you know, you guys kind of printed out maybe a 1-pager or something that was like local vendors or something like that.
Yeah, we did, and it was actually kind of a last-minute thing that people were asking for. So a lot of people showed up with a bunch of tapes and wanted to know where they could go after this event to get those digitized. So I just quickly put together a sheet with a handful of vendors. But I think having a little more time to prepare that, there's you know, a long list, and it would be nice to have a little note on what format each one could handle and that type of
right.
Too. Like how much it costs.
Yeah. And then
or like stay away from this vendor. They're no good.
Right. Yeah, I know, right, but like we can't actually, I feel like as public libraries and stuff, like we can't really say that either. Like that's a lawsuit. So I feel like a lot of times when I recommend vendors and whatnot, it's more of a, there's a couple of resources I point people towards, and it's mostly the Center for Home Movies website has like a list of vendors, which we're coming up with a third maximum preservation zine. This very soon. It should be released for October, and that's going to have the links in it for this the Center for Home Movies like kind of list of vendors, which they make sure to say that they're not necessarily approving of these vendors, but these are vendors who like they do a certain amount of things that are good for Center for Home Movies. So. And then there's like AMIA, Association of Moving Image Archivists, supplier directory. So that's also, they make sure to say that they can't totally, recommend or say, yes, this, they can't say one's good and one's bad. So it's so tough to do that. I mean, you can just say like, oh, these are very popular, and we've heard, that they're very professional, or they meet these certain amount of criteria. So, and then as far as formats go, Barry, I remember you were asking about that. That's actually an interesting point. Like we have on our website, we have these cool little images that for each format, for a lot of different formats that like my predecessor, Lorena, made. And maybe we can put them in like a little zine to hand out, because that is really cool to have. People really like to have things to take away with them.
We have cheat sheet. Like we just have like a one-page cheat sheet that has like years, a picture of each thing, and different like unique characteristics about it or things to keep in mind. Like it's very brief, but it has been helpful for other people, and like also showing like the different sizes.
Yes.
People think that a smaller one of the same format isn't the same thing.
Can we cheat off of your cheat sheet? Can you send us the cheat sheet, or send me, and then I'll disperse?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. I feel like we had another question. Suzanne asked, what kind of outreach did you do leading up to the pop-up event, which I also was curious about that. And Andrew said that they relied on KEXP promotion, on-air radio spots, and through their web event promotion. So I'm guessing that's like a calendar.
They have like a calendar.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
We shared it on our various social medias.
Right. I feel like I did see that on social medias. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we had about a month of on-air promo from KEXP, and then a little bit of press coverage of the event beforehand as well from GeekWire and a local news broadcaster. I can't remember if that was King 5 or Como.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Como. Covered the event as well.
And I will say that lots of the people who showed up specifically said like, oh, my friend heard about this on the radio and told me about it, and I had to come down. So I think that was very effective.
Yeah, and then how long did you mark it? Like a month? Because you said about a month, but for everything, is that when you guys, like, how long do you think the planning process took? And marketing? Oh.
Whoops, I was muted. I think we announced the event about a month and a half before it happened, but we started planning in earnest, I would say, in January for this late July event.
Did you like, how'd you get that GeekWire spot? Did you have like a press release, or did it just come through the KEXP, PR line?
Yeah, the KEXP, I think it was a contact that KEXP's marketing team had at GeekWire who'd done some pieces before about the library and archives specifically. We reached out to them knowing that they might have interest in covering it.
Also, that just like in general for doing outreach for events and stuff, we've found it pretty successful to like send, like we will like send an email to like whoever, you know, and like the person that wrote the article about the KEXP event, we sent them an email telling them like, you know, we saw that your articles tend to be about kind of stuff we're involved in, like, would you be interested, here's some cool stuff we're doing at our organization, would you be interested in writing an article about us? So, and just kind of like being persistent, like we kept persistently submitting pitches to the stranger, and then they like submit, which is like a weekly magazine here, and then they finally like put one of our events in their featured list. So just kind of like bothering people in a nice way, but being like, you know, this is cool, like there's a good story here, like take a look at this. It's been pretty useful.
Yeah, that's a great point. I definitely, I'm always using like any of the like local papers or local radio stations. They all seem to have those calendars, and they let you like, it's just like, do you want to upload an event? And I tend to like upload it, and once in a while that'll like get me like, you know, someone will like call and ask for more information, or it'll get it put in the paper and things like that because they think it looks cool. But yeah, and also like cold calling and emailing. That's something that like, yeah, PR, that like promotional work is, it's not rocket science. It just like takes time, and sometimes it's a little like, yeah, you feel like you're kind of like selling something, but you are, and you're very, you know, it's a very passionate sell because you want people to be there and you want people to have this opportunity, because that's the most, you know, that was like one of the first things as soon as our events are over. I always get someone tweeting or emailing me, I didn't know about this. I'm like, we tried, you know, and then they ask when's the next one, and I'm like, give me a few months, you know, need some time.
Right.
But yeah, that's awesome. And did you guys use like Google like forms or something for people to fill out?
For the event registration, we used a tool called Cvent that KEXP I think has access to through University of Washington, who we're partnered with. But what we did, I think, could totally have been done in a Google form.
And I have one more question about marketing. Who did the cool artwork? Because it was cool.
That was a friend of mine, an older roommate of mine who I asked if he'd be willing to put something together, and he did. And I was just like, yeah, include some of these formats, and I shared just some clip art like of formats, and he came up with the rest of it from there.
Sweet.
Yeah. I'll
Good
pass
to have.
that on.
Yeah, please. Compliments to the chef. So yeah. Oh, and your workstation recipes? Those sound cool. Anything that you guys want to share, that would be great. I'll pass on to the partners here.
Great. Yeah. I think we could revisit them and make them more accurate than they changed from planning to actual day of.
No, totally. I agree. You expect the change. Yeah, manage that. Yeah. All right,
yeah,
cool. Any other
share
questions for everyone? Cool. Okay. Awesome. Well, I don't know if you guys want to take off or not. My spiel will be pretty quick, but thank you so much for sharing your event. your awesome event. Well done. That looked like a heck of a lot of work. And I'm going to talk about a much smaller event that we did last Friday. Oh my gosh, it was really not that long ago. So can everyone see my slides? Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Can everyone hear my dog? Okay. So, like I said, it was last Friday that we had this event from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And this was at the Northeast branch of the DC Public Library, which is where our memory lab currently is. And this started with Julia Kim, who works at Library of Congress's American Folklife Center. She and I went to the same program at NYU, and she was also, before joining Library of Congress, she was a founding member of the Transfer Station and the Transfer Collective out of New York, which we've talked about kind of extensively with our partners. And the Transfer Collective, just as a reminder for you guys, eventually turned into they basically have their video rack and digitization station at the Metro studio in New York City that we had Molly Schwartz come and talk about. So this is very, very, very much inspired by the Transfer Collective and Transfer Station, which Julia had a lot of experience with, and which is kind of like branching out to a lot of other places. I just heard that there's now a Transfer Collective in Boston as well that's starting up. So we just kind of wanted to do a one-day thing because our memory lab is closed on Fridays, and we wanted to do more outreach because I've had questions before from local organizations like, just asking if they can bring while it's not their own personal digital archives, can we bring our small amount of collections or some oral histories that we have? And of course, we would love that. So it was sort of like specifically a day that we were going to do outreach for towards other or smaller organizations. That was the goal. It kind of got switched up a little, but so since I didn't want to do it alone, it was very key to have Library of Congress join us, even though the majority of the equipment was already there, which is really nice. I did have to cart some other stuff from home, like some film equipment, but for the most part, it was already there. So like setup was good. The memory lab's used every day, so it was working. It was we didn't really have to test too many things. A lot of those workflows were super documented and everything. The huge part was having the Library of Congress write a blog post about it for us. This was honestly probably the most marketing that we did, was this that came out August 15th. So not too much time, it didn't really give us too much leeway time. That was one of our takeaways, and the things that we learned was that even though we started planning this we started talking about it in May and then started planning it in June, we don't know where July went, but then it took much longer for us to get approvals and things like that on marketing. So that's something that I wish we had done a little bit more, but also I'm not sure that we would have been able to handle any more people that we had. But so they did this great article, here's some of our planning, just like a little snapshot of our planning spreadsheet that I can also share. And we decided, and this is probably why we didn't get as many people either, but we decided to try, since the main thing is we want memory transfer to be like a thing that we do pretty, regularly, since if there's a Friday, maybe like 4 times a year actually, or something like that, where there's a Friday, we all come in and, assist people and perform outreach about the Memory Lab and about AV preservation. So normally with the Memory Lab, we allow 3-hour time slots because it's so hard to tell with tape how long they're going to be. But for this, we decided to make it 2 hours so that we could, still kind of fit more people in than we normally do on the Memory Lab, but then also so we wouldn't totally overwhelm ourselves. So that was the thing too, that we're like, this is sort of just a test. Obviously we want people to show up, but like we really just want to kind of see how things flow and move and what people want and what works and what doesn't. So this is sort of a very last minute put together time frame of what we did. We were able to transfer VHS, VHS-C, SVHS, mini DV, DV cam, the audio compact cassettes, and then we have a very nice slides and negatives and photo scanner. And we actually had not just a nice oversized one, but we also had another separate, more mobile one that we had. And so we had these 2-hour time slots from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. and it's a little bit more guided than our usual Memory Lab DIY-ness. And instead of having like a doodle poll or anything, I had people just email me so that I could just, because I have done these kinds of events before where I've had people sign up for slots, and they just email me a lot anyway and have a lot of questions, and I have a lot of questions for them, and they're not clear what their format is and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, let's just start that communication right away. And I don't, have to, and we can just get this marketing out there and I don't have to make some sort of doodle poll. And also there was a lot of confusion with doodle polls, like people thought they filled things out and they didn't. So I wanted to avoid that. So from 12:30 to 1:30, this was our most popular thing. Things got crazy in there for an hour. Ask an Audiovisual Archivist Hour, where you could just drop in and you could ask trained audiovisual experts about your personal archives. So we also opened it up to Twitter, so that was cool. We used these hashtags, Ask an AV Archivist and or hashtag Memory Transfer. So you guys can check those out. We had a good amount of people asking some questions that we responded to, and so that was key. We also had that projected. We had like Twitter projected up in the room, in one of the rooms that we had. And then at 3 p.m., Michelle Stefano from Folklife, she's Folklife specialist from the ASC at Library of Congress. She did a little lecture about cultural documentation and how best to record oral histories, and that was a drop-in. And then I gave a class on preserving and caring for, mostly it's digital preservation, but the focus was on digital photographs. So that was drop-in as well. And next slide. No. So then, going on to the photos, I can talk a little bit more quickly about how, and I just learned, so we're in Dropbox right now, you guys, and I went and uploaded on the Dropbox app from my phone. I took all these pictures on my phone, and I uploaded it yesterday on my phone via the app, and you know what was super cool is that they had a bulk file renaming like option. So I got to rename normally I just don't do that, unfortunately, right away. Obviously I do it later. But maybe you can see in the URL, you can see my file naming convention there. So that was really exciting to me that Dropbox has that option now, and that was a neat discovery. So here we have someone who actually dropped in. We only had one drop in, and we only had one. They did eventually show up, but they actually were supposed to be there at 11, and luckily they emailed and things like that. But they came at 3, and we weren't able to accommodate them. But luckily they were very understanding and planned to come back to the memory lab, and they got a little bit of a more comfortable with where the memory lab is and how to use it. So that's good. So we had this gentleman drop in and scan some slides. And then, of course, we had our zines. That's a huge thing. People really like to have things to take away. We had a sign-in sheet and our waivers. That's our memory lab waivers there. And then we had another audio. We set up this sort of like more portable audio digitization station. But unfortunately, even though I tested the laptop, I tested everything except for the like compact cassette deck. It was a different compact cassette deck that I tested it with, and for some reason they just didn't play well. And it also could have just been that laptop is really old and decided to just stop working completely as well. So that's something to really plan for, is things will go wrong even if you've tested, which I try. But really, if you can, if you want to avoid that stress, which I kind of just embrace it, and God bless this mess kind of thing. And but if you don't like that, then I really recommend testing literally like every single part of the signal flow and the and every single part to any kind of workflow, honestly, in these kinds of things. We had some flash drives we were able to give away, which normally we make sure to tell people, when you use the memory lab, you have to bring your own external hard drive, but this is just for promotional materials today. And then we had a VHS, and honestly, people could have brought in their high 8, digital 8, and video 8 as well to view there on that little tiny little viewer there. So this was just like an assessment station. So people could look at their tapes if they don't have these decks anymore and decide if it was worth their time to bring it into the memory lab. And we did have one person watch a tape and decide and realize that it was mislabeled and decide, oh, I'm so glad I didn't spend 3 hours and carting down here again to digitize this. So that was good. I brought in a light box and loop and my 16mm film rewind, and someone did, while they told me that they had 8mm, they had 8mm, and then they just brought in some 16 too. So, oh, these are actually slides. But, so here's on the left, you can see my 16mm rewind that you wind through the film. And this is actually something that, while you need to have some film handling experience to work with, this kind of setup I would love eventually to have at memory labs across the states, because while digitizing film is not what we're doing currently, and we haven't really found a way that we feel comfortable doing it and having it be a DIY setup, this could be something that I really feel like people can do themselves with a little bit of training. So it's basically, and it's very safe on the film. So anyway, so on the left is the 16mm rewinding. You just look at it over the light box, and you have a loop, a magnifying loop, and you can at least see like what the condition is of the film and what the content is. And then on the right, I have a little 8mm and Super 8 film, motion picture film viewing machine, which also the light bulb was burnt out. I have to get a new light bulb, but it's cute, so it's more there for show. And then we're looking down at the memory lab. So we had not just the memory lab, but we also had a conference room that was on the second floor, the mezzanine floor, actually. So we're kind of looking down from there. And here's some film, looking through film through the loop. Boy meets dog, upside down. So we got to see that these films were indeed what was written on their can, and so they were like, oh, okay, they're probably not that unique. You know, this was some people just chatting, and this was the thing. Oh, it really was best that I just decided to send this maybe a week before, 2 weeks before, whenever the Library of Congress posted that blog. I sent that to the president of the Northeast Library Friends group, and they were very excited. And he said, "I will share this with our people that sign up for our newsletter or whatever." And I will say that that's probably the majority. There was one person then actually who works in like IT from the Library of Congress that came, but everyone else seemed to come from the neighborhood. They had heard about it from the Friends of the Library. So so everyone's being friends and cool. Signage is important. Arrows are important. So people can find you. So that's down at the memory lab. I say here and there. And I had like signs posted everywhere that I didn't feel like it would like tear the paint down. Oh, that's a much better one. And take lots of photos. Always take lots of photos. And people using, at one point we decided this gentleman was using the VHS, and normally we just have the AV on the left-hand side and the oversigned scanner on the right, but we were like, hey, let's just rewire the compact cassette, move it over, download Audacity onto that computer, and we had it. Since the other station that we had planned for wasn't working, so we were able to like you gotta think on the fly, and it ended up working out fine. This gentleman got his tape done. So that was our event, and overall I feel like it was we had about 7 volunteers, only about 3 that really stayed all day. We didn't have many people attend the classes, unfortunately, but the people that did got a lot out of it, and I'm happy about that. The 3 people that did, and then basically as I mentioned, we had a lot of people some drop-ins for the AV Archivist, Ask an AV Archivist hour, and then managing the Twitter too was like, it got very loud. So we had some older folks visiting, so it got actually a little bit harder for them to hear. So that was something I didn't really anticipate, were the acoustics in the conference room. And then it was wonderful to have so many volunteers. We kind of overstaffed with volunteers, but also it was really great. I have no regrets about that. And I gave them CCPL swag as gifts. So I feel like that's, you gotta thank your volunteers, you gotta thank the people that help you out. So it was overall, I feel like a big success. We're hoping to potentially do it at a different location next time, maybe make it more of a mobile thing, or partner with another local organization in the true like transfer collective model and style. So that is that. Are there any questions that you guys have for me about that event and holding events? Obviously, this is further down the line for you guys, but just want to show you the possibilities and also that partnerships are key. And I think that this is something we can probably drive home a lot for your classes. So starting that out, I just think every time it just seems like partnering, and then also apparently lots of time for promotion and just hitting it on the right day too. Luckily we had like good weather, and I think people just felt like walking around and going outside. If it had been raining, who knows if they had felt like it. So yay. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Libby and Ari. I see you guys have to run, so thank you so much. I want to make sure that we have time for questions from everyone. No? That's cool. Cool. All right. Well, do you guys have any other questions? Any partner-related purchasing questions or anything? Since we are now very excitingly in the purchasing part of our project. Shopping. So any questions on that? I want to make sure I'm going to follow up literally with this meeting. I'm going to follow up with the there's so many scheduling options. When is good? I'm going to send the when is good right after this so you guys can tell me your availability for September, so we'll get ahead of that. Oh, Suzanne asks, for the Acuity reservation system, is it simply a scheduler, or does it also reserve computer stations? I wish I had a direct answer for you. I'm pretty sure it's just a scheduler, e.g. patrons log in with their library card number. Gotcha. Nope. So it's basically, since the lab isn't like part of the labs have to be like on their own thing, especially this one, because we don't have it on the network and things like that. So the reservation system is just a scheduler. Okay, I understand. So basically, it just sends in updates to specific emails, like people who are going to be working that day and things like that, and they can check into the scheduler to see who's going to be there, what formats they're going to have, and answering those kinds of questions that we ask. So but basically when the person on the reference desk, I believe this is what happens when the person on the reference desk like checks in for the day before they open the doors, they have a special MemLab login that they log in, and then the person comes and they don't log in or anything necessarily. That's why a library card is needed to sign up for these, because it just asks for your number, but it's not necessary for logging in. So that's why we want, if there are groups or potentially people who might live in Northern Virginia, or like locally in Maryland that potentially want to come in, we can work with them to schedule something, so they don't necessarily need to be DC residents. Good question. Look at my dog. She's so cute. Yeah. Anyone else? Suzanne was also wondering. What was Suzanne wondering? Suzanne is typing. Well, I do have news that I think I can share with everyone while we're waiting for Suzanne's next question. But I got the go-ahead that everyone can start ordering their SVHS decks. So I'm going to, because I thought we were going to have to stagger it, but apparently we got a bunch of them in, and we should be able to start sending them out. So unless I've already contacted you, if I've already contacted you about SVHS, you don't have to do anything. If I haven't contacted you yet, I will contact you very soon with the vendor information and what exactly you'll be needing. So just wanted to send the news along. Suzanne asked, what software do you use to wipe down the hard drive on the MemLab station after each session? I don't remember. I feel like this might be in Nick's presentation from boot camp, because I know, I have a feeling he knows that, and I remember him saying it at one point, but I completely, gone. So, and that's our IT takes care of that, so I need to, and I remember based on our one-on-one the other day, Suzanne, it's on my list of things to ask. So I will get that answer to everyone, and I'll put that in on Slack for everyone to see so they know. Great question. Cool. All right, everybody. Well, if we don't have any more questions, thank you so much, Dylan and Andrew and Libby and Ari. Thanks so much. Well done on your event. And I hope you guys, our partners, MemLab partners, I hope you guys got inspired, and you can do it too. These are two different scale of things. There are obviously more AV archivists than you guys might have in the area, but you might be surprised. Just it's all about partnerships. You know, pull in as many people as you can, and just giving availability to the equipment and to reservation resources will be huge. So, awesome. Thank you all. Happy Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of your August. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.